The NBA trade deadline has come. It has gone. It was as eventful and dramatic and full of different machinations and chaos more than we can remember in recent memory. We're going to break it all down on a new episode of the Just Basketball Show. Let's go. What is up, everyone? Khris Manning and Wes Goldberg here, the Just Basketball Show, coming to you right after the NBA trade deadline. What a time this was. We covered Luka and De'Aaron Fox last week. We're going to get to Jimmy Butler and DeAndre Hunter and Mark Williams and Durant not getting moved and all kinds of other moves on today's show. But Wes, why don't you tell everyone who we're powered by today, being BetMGM?
If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code JustBasketball. You'll get up to $1,500 on a first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android. Sign up using the code JustBasketball. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use the bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply.
Wes, let's dive in. Let's start with Jimmy Butler to Golden State. I did a reaction video to this. It kind of broke my brain in a bunch of different ways, as I'm sure it did yours. My initial thought there was pretty direct. I think this is such an interesting bet of culture, of basketball ethos, of what they're going to spend in this year and the next year and the year after to chase one more title run or get one more crack at it, at least with Steph and Draymond before that era comes and goes. This was a place we didn't think Jimmy would resign to. Every indication we had was that he was only going to resign or want to go to Phoenix. He ends up with the Warriors, and he signs an extension. I think ultimately money talks, and the team willing to make the easiest deal possible for Miami won out there. The Suns come out big losers in that. We'll talk about them and Durant later, but the Jimmy Butler to Golden State deal, I think it has a good chance of working, but it's going to look right, I think, in a lot of ways, but I think there's a lot of questions to be answered, and it's going to be complicated, I think, in a lot of different ways. What is your reaction to it from someone who I know who's been thinking about Jimmy Butler for far too long the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, you already hit the nail on the head. The money talks part. I don't think Jimmy Butler ever cared about playing for the Phoenix Suns necessarily. I don't think he was looking forward to playing with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker more than anything, more than necessarily playing next to Steph Curry and Draymond Green or being coached by Mike Budenholzer more than being coached by Steve Kerr. I don't think that he looked at the chance to wear the same jersey as Charles Barkley, Steve Nash, and Amari Stoudemire, in some sort of romantic way. He just knew that the Suns would pay him the money, that they would give him the bag. And that's the only reason he ever wanted Phoenix. And as soon as it became evident that Golden State would be willing to give him the extension there, then he was like, okay, yeah, I'll go to San Francisco. No problem. It was always the money. It's always been the money for Jimmy Butler, and that's never changed. And he gets his money now. He gets that extension upon getting traded to Golden State. We'll take the Warriors side of this first because I think it is the more interesting part to most fans. I think there's a basketball fit there. Jimmy Butler is competitive, high basketball IQ player, does a lot of the things that the Warriors don't do, right? Where he gets to the foul line, he gets to the basket, he plays perimeter defense. Like, these are all things, doesn't turn the ball over. Doesn't foul. These are all things that the Warriors don't do or are not good at. But I think the interesting thing part about this is, well, some of these things they don't do on purpose. They're not an inside-out team. They're an outside-in team. That's on purpose, right? They are built around Steph Curry and Draymond Green kind of facilitating from the perimeter and all these things. How does Jimmy Butler add the things that they need without adding the things that they don't want? I think that's a really interesting part to how this is going to play out on the basketball court. Ultimately, I do think it's just a talent play. They go from Andrew Wiggins to that. The way it was put to me when I kind of was asking people close to the Warriors situation about, like, okay, why did the Warriors make this deal? And they basically just said, like, they loved Andrew Wiggins. They loved, and it was hard for them to part with him. But at the end of the day, the very top of this organization just knew that there was no reason to keep a 500 basketball team together. And they knew that they needed to make some sort of upgrade. And I don't know about you, Khris, but I don't know how plugged into like Warriors Twitter you are or anything. I don't know that the Warriors fans had been begging the Warriors to make a move for years now. They make the move, and it doesn't feel like Warriors fans are super happy about this one. And I find that extremely interesting in that, well, obviously they would have loved to have Kevin Durant, I would think. I don't know how Warriors fans would have responded if they gave up the farm for KD.
I mean, the thing about the Durant thing is that one is just like, we know what that looks like, and we know how it's going to work and how it's going to feel from a basketball standpoint. The personality side of that, it seems like, was not going to work, which in some ways is funny considering Jimmy might be more amenable there in a way KD wasn't, which is not how you would think about those personalities, I would say to some degree, right? Like that to me was kind of an interesting dynamic as that story unfolded on Wednesday.
So what do you think about the basketball fit? Do you think that this makes the Warriors... It makes them better. We both agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Yeah, and I think it's a good philosophical evolution for them. I think this is, in some ways, needed for what they are. They didn't get shooting at the deadline, which I think is an issue for the rest of the season. I think in the summer that becomes priority number one, is finding more spacing. They were linked to Vooch, but finding shooters in any way, shape, or form to provide more spacing around everyone is going to be the offseason priority number one to make this work. But I think the philosophy adjustment of getting a guy who can go downhill, who can create for others, who can create like ugly offense for you. They've never really had ugly offense in this whole Steph Curry era, right?
No, like even when Kevin Durant did the ugly offense in the mid-range, it looked so pretty.
It's because it's Kevin fucking Durant, and they were loaded with talent, and it's like, oh, we're in a close game, and we're playing like. I remember like seeing. I've told the story before, I think on the show, Wes, and told this to you at least. But I have the Kevin Durant pull-up three over LeBron from like 2017 just stuck in my head. It was the best shot I've ever seen live. That's in some ways ugly offense because it was like an ISO pull-up, but it's smooth and clean and it just works. This is gonna be different. Like Jimmy this year, and I would say you're betting that the free throw dip for him is an effort thing more than anything else. I would gather that's what it feels like. But you're getting a guy who's going to attack inside, chase fouls, slow the pace of the game down, and not be so built on movement and flow. This is going to be a downhill attacking kind of thing for a team that has never had quite this kind of thing. I think it's a really good kind of necessary evolution. It is. I think, obviously not. I think we know it wasn't their first choice of who they wanted to get, and maybe not even the plan. But I think the acknowledgement to some degree that they needed more and more at whatever that was going to look like.
Right.
I think getting that more is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I think the way to look should work. I think it should. Him and Steph in particular should be a really fun combo.
No doubt about it, right? And he paints over a lot of issues and concerns that Golden State currently has, but he's also going to open up some new concerns. And that's the spacing part of this too. Like, think about Golden State's best players. Steph Curry, obviously. And then you could argue Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga are their next three best players, and they all play the same position. This is going to be a weird sort of fit in basketball terms, in terms of like what's the starting lineup? What is when everybody's healthy? What does their closing lineup look like? I think you can close with Draymond, Jimmy, and Kuminga. Are you going to open with those guys? Is Kuminga going to keep coming off the bench? You didn't move Kuminga before the deadline, and all the reporting around Golden State suggests that they want to pay him this summer as a restricted free agent. So, and he's going to demand something close to the max, if not the max. So you're looking at Steph owed a lot of money. Draymond's owed $20+ million. Jimmy Butler's going to be making $54 million next year. Jonathan Kuminga's going to be making a lot of money. This is going to be suddenly a really expensive team next year if everybody stays. And I don't know, like they're not Oklahoma City. They're not Denver. They're not the Lakers at this point. There's a lot of teams that I like over the Warriors right now, even with Jimmy Butler. So I don't know. I'm mixed on the addition. I think what it does is because what Andrew Wiggins was such a clean fit in all those lineups. Like you never had to worry about him. There's a little bit of on the ball juice. He takes 6 3-pointers a game. He's a good floor spacer. He's a good on ball defender. He's a good rebounder when he decides to be. He also got to the foul line. He was probably their best guy at doing that. So I don't know. I think the fit is a little bit clunkier, but what you're betting on, I guess, if you're Golden State, is they'll probably stay around 500. I don't think that this makes them a better regular season team.
No, it doesn't.
But you're betting you're betting on the ceiling in the playoffs, and that's the one thing that Jimmy Butler gives you is that threat of playoff Jimmy and that shot creation. And I think at the end of games, they could be really, really dangerous. So I think the strategy in Golden State is like, let's just keep these games close for 3.5 quarters, and then we've got Steph and Jimmy for the final 6 minutes of hopefully a close playoff games, and maybe that does something for us.
I mean, the Butler trade is a bet on having a higher ceiling in the playoffs, full stop. Like, that's what this is in its simplest terms, I think. The Kuminga thing becomes fascinating because I think somewhat this will impact what he's able to do. Like, him and Jimmy together is going to be really interesting. Number two, they have to like find a way to thread the needle of like not like the Brooklyn Nets absolutely should just be giving him the biggest offer sheet possible because he's like a good, interesting player, and they can F with another team by just giving him a big offer if they like him to any degree, like when the market opens in July. The Warriors have to like fathom, like based on not a ton of time, like what do you pay him? How does he fit? Because you can't just lose him at this point. Like, you're in a mode where now it's like the only way you can lose him if you're trading him for something else. Like, if there was like I don't think this would work 1-to-1, and you have to have probably other stuff considering Danny Ainge. But it's like if you could turn Kuminga into Markkanen, you'd fit better. But like getting that done becomes like an incredibly complicated proposition. You have to keep Kuminga. You have to still get his development right. Like, that is still a huge part of this.
And I think
Jimmy can't take away. Jimmy has to make you better without taking too much away from Kuminga, and that is going to be a really delicate line to walk.
Yeah, Kuminga was basically competing with Draymond Green for a role in Golden State. Now he's competing with Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler. Like, the Kuminga part of this is going to be fascinating because, look, he's still injured right now, so they don't have to worry about this currently, but it's going to be like, so all right, closing lineup: Draymond Green, Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, Steph Curry, and you need spacing. Is it just Buddy Hield? And
it's probably Buddy Hield, and you're playing Draymond at the 5, and like that, I think that has to be it.
And that's
for
a
this
lot
year,
of work.
at least.
That's a lot of work for Draymond, Kuminga, and Jimmy defensively, because Steph, although he works hard, can get targeted by bigger wings.
Yes,
and obviously Buddy Hield is going to get targeted in those lineups too. So look, no lineup, like there are very few perfect lineups in the NBA, but I don't know how great I feel about that one if I'm Golden State. And so, can you get a Podziemski bounce back? Can you get something like can Moses Moody be? I think this also opens up a pathway for Moses Moody because it always felt like Andrew Wiggins was what they wanted Moses Moody to be. So now that Wiggins is no longer there, is there a pathway for more Moody minutes? I think that would make Warriors fans pretty happy, and I think that could clear some things up there. But yeah, there's Draymond Green was asked about this. I read this in Anthony Slater's report after the trade on Wednesday night, and Draymond was Slater, I guess, asked Draymond about it, and he was like, "Fit, we're both winners. We're both winners, and we've both won. That's how we fit." And I was like, "Well, no, not really."
That's a good. That's a
That's
great.
true. I would
that's
bank
not
on
it. I need to see like a bootleg T-shirt with that quote on it, with like Jimmy and Draymond in like a really bad and just really really bad artwork on like a $15 flimsy as hell T-shirt outside of Oracle like in a week.
Right.
I need to see that. That's ready made money for our street vendors out there.
And it's different than what the Lakers have with LeBron and Luka, where I do think that there are basketball considerations there in terms of who has the ball for how long, what's the other one doing, what's LeBron and Luka doing off the ball when the other one is on the ball. But what makes it work and why I'm not nearly as concerned about that as I am the Jimmy Butler fit in Golden State is when you have guys who are threats on the ball and are scorers and can drive and kick and all those things, a lot less of those fit concerns. But as opposed to a situation in Golden State where, yeah, Jimmy Butler, like he's not a good shooter from the outside. Kuminga, nobody respects him from the outside. Draymond, nobody respects him from the outside. So I think it's fascinating, and I think Steve Kerr is going to have his work cut out to try to figure out these best lineups and who's going to stagger when and all of these different things. But yeah, I think it makes the Warriors. I think it improves their ceiling. I think it makes them competitive. I think that makes them fun. I don't know if it completely accomplishes what they want to do. I just think that this is the Warriors kind of striking out on LeBron, striking out on KD, striking out on Markkanen, striking out on Paul George, seeing the Jimmy Butler thing there, realizing it's only going to cost them one first-round pick, and breaking up a core part of a 500 basketball team, and basically just kind of holding their nose and saying, we don't really have a reason not to do this, and we kind of have to do something. And I think that's what this ultimately comes out to.
Yeah, I think this is not a title team this year. I do really now kind of want to see like Warriors Thunder first round just to like pressure test the Thunder a little bit, especially if they're not shooting well from 3 in a series. Like, and Jimmy and Steph, if they can find that 2-man game, if they can find the rhythm in short enough order, like I kind of want to see that matchup at some point in the playoffs. And like, I think that would be fascinating. I think they have a better chance now to win a title or at least chase one in the next 2 years than they did before this, and I think that's probably reason enough to do this trade, even though it's going to be very expensive and doesn't come without risk. All right, Wes, let's go to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who made I think they nailed this.
Yeah, I gotta ask, how do you feel? Let's go.
I think they nailed this. Like Niang from I'm not covering the team data anymore, but from people I've talked to here and there throughout the year, and also a dear friend of mine who covers the team. Niang's been like a really good locker room like vibes guy for them. I think they will like miss some of that energy. LeVert less so, even though I think he was well liked there. But to trade those two guys who I don't think were LeVert was on it expiring, I think had absolutely a chance to just be like a really inefficient playoff guy for you that didn't know what you do with. Niang is an absolute playoff defensive liability, particularly against Boston. Those guys, turning those guys into Hunter. You gave up like seconds and second swaps, which like on the fringes, did you need to give all of that? Maybe like that's the one part I don't maybe love about this, but I think it's like an B plus A minus kind of trade for Cleveland, right? Like you got a piece in a big defensive wing who can shoot, which is the most coveted skill set in the league. You have him under contract for 2 more years after this one. This team has really dipped this year when Dean Wade's been out. They have now insurance for Dean, but they kind of have like 2 Dean Wade types, which they needed that kind of thing. And they have Hunter under contract for 2 more years after this at a good number. In a market where you have to control your costs as best you can. This makes them better now. It helps them throughout the next couple of years as they have this window. And they're just more flexible lineup-wise now. I mean, if you think about how they could close games with this team, the first one that came to mind was Garland, Mitchell, Strus, Hunter, and Mobley. That fucking rocks. Like, that's a great way to close a game. You could go bigger. You could put Hunter at the 3 and have Mobley and Allen on the floor with your 2 guards. You could have Hunter and Wade out there instead of Strus and have the 2 guards with Mobley at the 5. You have more flexibility now. You have a guy that I think will fit this team really well. I think gives them a needed skill set, and they upgraded. This team flat out got better, and I think sneakily maybe the most important part of this, West, they got under the tax. For a team that is going to be so all in the next couple of years, ducking under the tax this year reduced the costs over the next couple of years, and when they eventually do go into the tax, they can extend this window like another year longer because they got under the tax right now. Like, that's really good work by Kobe Alma to make your team better, cut costs, and blend all those together. That is a very hard line to walk.
And they become a player on the buyout market because they're under the tax now too, which could be a key part if they want to do that. Did you hear
the name that Wendy has linked them to like twice? I hate it. I think that Ben Simmons for them, it's a bad idea. Like, don't do that. Like, just get Yusuf Nurkic if he gets bought out by Charlotte. Like, do that.
So I think you undersold this. You called this an A minus. I think this is an A plus, dude. Like, this is such a slam dunk. What were you talking about? 2nd-round picks, and you don't love that? Who cares, dude?
It's just like
you're entitled to miss me with the 2nd-round picks.
Yeah, I know.
Who cares?
I'm in my like finance.
Get off the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, I
work for
I work for a bank, West. Like, my brain is cooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is what
Come on, this is a home run for the Cavaliers. This is the most impactful trade done before the deadline in the Eastern Conference.
Love this take.
This reminds me of when the Raptors traded from Marc Gasol in 2019.
Holy shit! That's our point.
There was
like
I'll explain it. I mean, there wasn't when the Raptors made the Gasol trade. They had Serge Ibaka starting as their center, solid at that spot. The Raptors were winning a ton of games in the regular season, but they knew playoff time, Ibaka's going to be a problem for us. We don't have a solve to. We're not sure if he could stay on the court against the best teams. We need a little bit more passing from that position. We need a little bit more defense from that position. We need a little bit more just oomph from that position. Quick decision making, all these things when we're going up against a team like potentially the Warriors in the NBA Finals. They went out and got Marc Gasol, and it put them over the top that year. I think the Cleveland was looking at their wing rotation and said, Dean Wade is really good when he's healthy, but he's not a perfect player for us.
And also always hurt. Misses 20 games
always hurt. Do we really want him guarding Tatum and Jaylen Brown and some of these other guys in the East? Probably not. Isaac Okoro can guard those guys, can't shoot a lick. Max Strus is our good spacer, isn't a good defender. You already mentioned the issues with Niang. So they kind of had a bunch of guys that did some of the things that DeAndre Hunter does. DeAndre Hunter just does all of those things that all of those guys do combined into one player. Karis LeVert, good wing scorer. I think inefficient as a scorer.
Yeah.
Defensively, there's some concerns. DeAndre Hunter is a better scorer than Karis LeVert. He has more 20-point games than any reserve in the league this year. DeAndre Hunter does. So, and as an outside shooter, way more reliable than any of those guys outside of Max Strus, and certainly more than the guys that LeVert and Niang, who you lost in the deal. And he can also shoot better than those second-round picks for the record. But so you have that, and then defensively, I think he's better than all those guys except for Okoro. So he's sort of what you hoped that Okoro was going to be. And the Hawks beat the Atlanta Hawks beat the Boston Celtics last month. And DeAndre Hunter was their primary defender against Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Mm-hmm. Hunter, when he was in the game, spent most of his time against Brown and against Tatum. He held Tatum to 0 shot attempts in his time guarding Tatum in that game. Brown went 2 for 5, which isn't awful, but it's not amazing either. DeAndre Hunter is a direct kind of attack on, we know we're probably going to have to get through Boston. We needed DeAndre Hunter. We need a guy like this to beat Boston. And DeAndre Hunter is not an amazing defender, but he ranked second on the Hawks in isolation defense per B-ball index. Again, not incredible, but he's got the body type that you're looking for. And then you put him in Cleveland's context where he's got Evan Mobley next to him and he's got Jarrett Allen behind him. I think he becomes a better defender in that context than even what he was in Atlanta. And like this is the kind of move that sets you up to then not just challenge the Boston Celtics. This can help you beat the Boston Celtics. They needed this guy. They got this guy. He's young. He fits their window. And you basically didn't have to give up anything to get him. Anything of note. I'm a little shocked that this is all the Hawks got.
Yeah. We're gonna get to Memphis later. Kind of surprised Memphis wasn't in on this. I don't really they needed they wanted they've been in the market for every other wing. From Mikal Bridges to DFS to Cam Johnson to Bob Myers just casually saying that they probably called about Durant on the ESPN telecast.
And
they
Durant told him no.
Yeah, no one seems to want to go to Memphis. But they didn't seem to be in on Hunter or couldn't beat this with a first or better young players. I don't totally get that. And maybe they just didn't like him for whatever reason. One thing about Hunter and his numbers this year, Wes, that really encourages me is that his 3-point volume has gone up to a career best 6.7 a game.
Mm-hmm.
He's shooting nearly 40% on threes. Ever since his age 24 season, he has been 37.9%, 35, 38.5, and 39.3, and the volume is ticked up year after year. This is a plus shooter now, as well. It was kind of a thing that he was kind of not high volume enough, and now it's just there. His job in this team is going to be to shoot a bunch of threes and defend at a high level. He's fully equipped to do that, and I agree with you on the point about Mobley now. Him being the third best defender on the court when he's with those guys, or the second best if he's with one of them, maybe third if it's a core defending at the point of attack, depending on the matchup, is going to be set him up for huge success. And even just you think about Cleveland playing Boston, which they just lost to them earlier this week. This makes this matchup for Cleveland just a little more palatable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Garland and Mitchell are going to get attacked in that series.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little harder to do that now when you can have Mobley and DeAndre Hunter there to switch and do the work there to game plan for that. That makes that just a little bit harder for Boston in a way that it was never going to be. It also, I think, is interestingly a vote of confidence in Ty Jerome to maybe step up and fill that ball handling role. What they do now at the end of that rotation, when Okoro's back, he's out right now. Do they go to him and lean defensive? Do they just embrace Jerome and say that we probably are going to try to bring you back next year now because we have a little more flexibility? Do we keep you and then you replace LeVert for us? Do they go to Sam Merrill?
Buyout guy?
Yeah, or is it Sam Merrill? And just go full shooting and lean on the defensive side of it. I think all of the options, it could be matchup dependent.
I think
playoff dependent.
I think also Strus, he's a better playmaker than he's gotten to show.
Yeah. Did you see his dunk the other night?
Yes. What? I was like, whoa, where did that come from?
It was awesome.
Yeah, his hair gave him like new powers or something. I don't know.
He's I don't know if this was a thing in Miami, but he's been like he will oftentimes wear like Miller Lite gear and like
No.
drink Miller.
No, this is a thing when he like Max Strus
needs-
was always sort of miscast as like hot guy in South Beach. Like it wasn't really.
Nah,
his
this
thing.
is this is a Midwest king. This is an
He's a
absolute
Midwest guy when it comes down to
Yeah,
it.
and
He's
and
home.
He's been like angling for like Miller Lite like SpawnCon, and they need to give him whatever influencer package they've been giving to some random jabroni on Instagram. Max Strus deserves it after that. He deserved it anyway, but give Max Strus his Miller Lite deal. The Cavs are. I have them like West one, like they're like just because Boston won the title last year. They, I think, deserve favorite status in the East. The Cavs are like this close behind them. The Cavs are right there.
I have 3 teams in the same tier. I've got Boston, Cleveland, Oklahoma City. Those are the 3 favorites. I don't know how you talk yourself into either one of them to be by themselves in a tier by themselves. Like those are the 3 favorites. And if you had any questions about Cleveland, I think that wing spot was where it was. And look, DeAndre Hunter, I don't mean to like oversell it as him being like Kawhi Leonard here, but he's
called him Marc Gasol though, which is awesome.
I mean, Marc Gasol in his Toronto days was not Marc Gasol what he was at his peak in Memphis, but he was the kind of just what he provided the team was like greater than the sum of his own parts, right? It was a one solution to kind of fix a lot of different holes, and that's sort of what DeAndre Hunter is. DeAndre Hunter in a vacuum is an okay basketball player. I think in the context in Cleveland, he takes care of a lot of some of the issues that we had with them.
Yes. Home run trade. He should start, I think. Is really the I think he should be the starting. Maybe not first game. Maybe bring him off the bench just to get him acclimated if he plays Friday or on the weekend. But that's a starting guy. That's a guy that's closing in your lineups. Mm-hmm. I think full stop.
Yep.
All right, Wes. Before we get into Mark Williams, a trade I like. I'm kind of down on in some ways. There's a lot of risk here and went out for the Lakers that I don't love, and we'll get into that. But I want to tell everyone about Homage. Homage is the ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company with NBA and WNBA licenses that uses vintage-inspired designs to pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and popular culture. Use our link below in the description. Make your purchase. Support the Just Basketball Show. They have every NBA team's license. So if your team just made a great move, go buy yourself some new merch and celebrate. They also have a really cool Captain America collection launching ahead of the new Captain America movie from Marvel. So if you're a Captain America fan, if you're a Marvel fan, you want to check that out at Homage, check them out now. Use the link below. Wes, Mark Williams to me is, I get it. I get it. On one hand, I fully understand the logic here from the Lakers. You needed a lob threat for Luka. You absolutely got that, a young guy who is in some ways having a really, really interesting season. You will have to pay him pretty here shortly, but like you kind of just needed to go get this kind of player. Seemed a much more gettable cost-wise than like a Walker Kessler, who I think would have been like the perfect fit if you could pick one out. I have 2 concerns. Number one, you gave up Connect and the 2031 pick. Yes, that 2031 pick I think took a huge dent in the value the moment Luka Doncic showed up looking slim as hell and played for the Los Angeles Lakers, because they're just less likely to be a disastrous franchise by 2031 because they have Luka now. Because it's not transitioning from LeBron to AD, it's transitioning from LeBron to Luka as Luka's in his prime. There's also going to be a huge defensive learning curve for Williams that would scare me a little bit. Dunks and Threes, the really great analytics site, has him as the 3rd worst center defensively in the league this year by defensive plus minus. Effort. I mean, there's a clip that went viral the other day of him getting absolutely lambasted by a Charlotte color guy on the desk for his effort. I think defensively there's like going to need to be huge leveling up for him. The talent is there, the athleticism is there. Maybe it is just the environment in Charlotte that is bringing him down, but they have to absolutely believe and be able to trust their player development in a new environment and getting great touches that feed him on the defensive end to get a better version of Mark Williams defensively that is going to help make this work. That was not there in Charlotte. It's a risk. I think with giving up Connect and the 2031 pick, I think carries some risk because Connect was going to help them, not just this year, but going forward. I think there's a lot of risk here. I get why they did it, but I don't love this trade for the Lakers, even if I get why they did it.
Yeah, when I first saw the report, I was like, "Whoa, that's a lot for Mark Williams."
It feels like
And
a lot.
yeah, but again, that's what you have to pay to get a guy who wasn't on the market, right? The Hornets were not shopping Mark Williams, so in order to get the Hornets to move off their 23-year-old 7-footer who they like, this is what you had to do. By the way, Charlotte also traded Nick Richards earlier in the year, so now they were like, okay, so we're just going to have no centers. And so this is what it took for them.
They got Nurk though.
Right. So we're just gonna have no centers. So they're basically
Went over under LaMelo asked for a trade before or after the draft.
Way after, dude. Like LaMelo is a pig in shit right now, just having a good time. Come on.
Riding the go-kart, preferably riding the go-kart on the roof. Okay.
No, I kind of. So, yeah, I was like, well, that's a lot, but that's what it's going to cost to get a guy who's not being shopped. You have to get the Hornets literally you have to propose an offer that they cannot refuse. And that's what that was, right? A pick, a swap, Dalton Connect. It's like, how do we say no to this if you're the Hornets? And if you're the Lakers, there's parts of this that I love and there's parts of this that I don't love. The part that I love is that you're getting a 23-year-old 7-footer who is the prototype of a guy who you want next to Luka Doncic and LeBron, but more importantly, Luka. And if you're going to trade your future, that's what you do it for. You don't trade a 2031 first for Clint Capella. You do it for a 23-year-old Mark Williams who has upside, who, to your point, we don't care so much about 2031 anymore, protecting 2031, because we've established our future in Luka. So let's just go ahead and build it out. And by the way, too, Luka can be a free agent if he doesn't sign an extension in 2026. So you want to get him a co-star that isn't LeBron James and maybe Mark. We know how much Luka Doncic wanted the Mavs to go get a rim-running center for years, and it took them years to do it. And the Lakers do it within days after acquiring Luka. So I think that's a big part of this too, and I don't think that should be understated.
He's going to be great offensively. Like, I don't have any doubt that he's going to
that's
be
the part
he's
that makes me a little queasy, right? Is the defensive part. He's one of the few 7-footers in the league where offensive players are actually scoring above their average percentage at the rim when being defended by Mark Williams. Yeah, that's a hard thing to do when you're 7 feet tall.
Yeah, Kevin Pelton had a thing from Second Spectrum in his trade grade that was like compared like him to Walker Kessler, and Williams was like it was like 10 or between 10 and 13% worse defending at the rim than Walker Kessler, which is like, that's just giving away points. And eye test wise,
that also kind of bears out.
It does. He does not look like a good defensive player at all right now.
But there's injury concerns. I know that's been brought up a lot. He just has not played a lot of games his first 3 years. I will say it was a big injury at the end of his second season, and that kind of trickled into this season that kind of eliminated a lot of games for him, and there was optimism in Charlotte that the injury stuff was sort of in the past. He has not had to go through surgeries or anything like that, so that's a good thing for a big man. I think I side more on liking this for the Lakers, because if you get in Charlotte, there was just no defense being played, and I wonder how much. And there was no other. Like, Mark Williams was being asked to anchor that defense in Charlotte. And I know he's going to be asked to anchor the defense now in Los Angeles. It's just a little different when you have to anchor a LeBron and Luka defense. There's just a little. You might have a little bit more pep in your step if that's the case. Right?
No question.
And I know LeBron James doesn't play defense anymore, but the one thing LeBron does do is get his teammates to play defense, because he won't do it.
He also will play defense in the playoffs.
And he'll play defense in the playoffs. And Luka has, sometimes played defense, and then sometimes he hasn't. But he's got the ability, and I do wonder if LeBron James's role now is just getting everybody to play defense. And so, I don't know. I like it as a talent. The swap to me is nothing. The Dalton Connect piece of it is tough. I think they're going to need the spacing eventually. They're going to have to find a solve for that. But it's a talent play, and there's not a lot of 7-footers with Mark Williams' athleticism that are out there. I mean, Rob Pelinka said it in his press conference, like, the center market was dry, and I think it was, right? You look at the other centers that moved, it was not a great market. You had to pay to get a guy who wasn't on the market, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and like as just a point of comparison, use the name that I think just makes the most sense and has been kind of floated out there is with you go to Walker Kessler. If it was like any other team but the Jazz that wasn't loaded with picks and could be gotten for this, you probably could have gotten him. That's a guy who's closer to an extension than not. Is a good but like sub all-star level player. that's a guy that you probably if he was on Charlotte, you might be able to get him from Charlotte instead of having to give up like a lot because he's on a team that already has all the picks in the world. So what do they need? More picks and another wing body to develop, right? Like it's like it's an asset need as much as it is like anything else there. Lakers top 8 now looks probably something like Luka, LeBron, DFS, Rui, Austin Reeves, Mark Williams, Gabe Vincent, and Vando, I guess. Like that's, and then Kleber, I guess if he can come back by the playoffs, you maybe put him in there as well. Maybe there's a buyout guy. Maybe Jackson Hayes projecting is probably at least in the regular season continues to play. Maybe there's a buyout guy there that they end up chasing. Maybe that's where they go. But that's an interesting top 8. Definitely will need improvement. I don't really have them as a title contender right now, but I think that the roster, even if there's some concerns, does make sense in some of these spots.
Yeah. I have them as an outside title contender, just because they have Luka and LeBron. I think you have to put them in sort of that mix. Would it be shocking if they won the finals? I don't think so. I don't think shocking would be the word, right? It would be shocking if the Sacramento Kings went ahead and won the finals. They're not the favorites. They're definitely outside that inner circle. They might be even outside like the outer part of the inner circle, but they have to be considered a contender now.
Yeah. How much did that get influenced by you by Luka looking slim in these first photos of the Lakers jersey? Like not looking. I just trying to get a laugh.
Photos can be altered, as we know. I don't
LA,
care about
in
photos.
LA. Yeah, influencer stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care about that stuff. I need to see him on the court.
Yeah. Buyout names that are out there right now, I would just throw these out there. That potential buyout candidates that are above the mid level. So if the Lakers were not able to get some of these guys, would be Brogdon, Bruce Brown, Simmons, Bojan Bogdanovic. Like those guys are out of the running for Boston, Denver, LA, Milwaukee, Minnesota, New York, and Phoenix. So they're going to be looking at someone a little bit lesser on that buyout market if they even can get someone. Probably won't make a huge impact, would be my guess. All right, let's go to Kevin Durant because did not get moved. But Wes, I don't think there was a player more talked about than Kevin Durant during this whole cycle. Like, I do not think there was a player more on anyone's minds throughout this whole run than Kevin Durant, and if he was unhappy, and if he wanted to go to Golden State, and if he wants to get traded, and what his future is. Like, it felt like he was ever present on everyone's mind this whole time. And it doesn't feel like that's going to stop by the time the season ends and we get to the summer. He's probably back being talked about as a trade target for a bunch of teams. Like the Atlanta Hawks were linked to Kevin Durant at this trade deadline. Like, I do not think we're done with Kevin Durant's future being in question after he did not get moved at this deadline.
Yeah, not even close. I mean, I think we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant, you don't ever see this. Kevin Durant did not ask for a trade. That's why he's still in Phoenix, for the record. Like, had he requested the trade, I think he gets moved because then the Phoenix Suns lose leverage. The Suns started exploring Kevin Durant trades without Durant asking for a trade. When was the last time that happened with a star player? You know what? Sorry. Obviously with Luka. Other than Luka, you don't see this really happen.
It's like when the Warriors like back channeled for LeBron last year. Like that's maybe like the last.
Yeah, but we don't even know what they were offering, right? Like we can imagine, but like the Suns were the team taking the calls on Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
They were sort of openly taking these phone calls, and for like the Suns, what a mess of an organization. I mean, you openly shot Bradley Beal for months, saying that you don't want him and you wish he would waive his no trade clause. And then within days of the deadline, you start openly shopping your best player.
Yeah.
Top 15. They are going to have a lot of work in rebuilding morale there. And so, look, Kevin Durant didn't request the trade. I don't think he wanted to be that guy. I don't think he wanted to move in the middle of the year. But I think he's also up for a contract extension this summer. And next year is the final year of his current contract. I think when the Phoenix Suns inevitably bow out of the playoffs early and come up short again, how does he not look around Phoenix and say, this ain't working? This team was already trying to trade me. This team doesn't know how to build an organization. They don't know how to keep morale. I'm going through different coaches. I'm going through different teammates, on and on. He's going to sign an extension? No way. And then once that happens, I think that's when the real stuff with Kevin Durant happens. He's going to be the big. He was the like you said. He was the most talked about name before the deadline. Ultimately, did not end up getting moved. He's going to be the most talked about name again this summer.
There's no way to fix this for Phoenix unless you just like move on. I think if you look at losers at the deadline, they're the loser. They get an F for how this deadline went up, and it's their own doing, right? Like this mess is their own doing. It's like you were the team that traded for Bradley Beal, and he was able to keep his no trade clause. Jimmy Butler's probably playing for the Phoenix Suns right now if Bradley Beal doesn't have a no trade clause. That no trade clause is one of the most powerful things that a guy who, look, good on his agent, good on him for getting it and keeping it. They earn that, right? But it has become this like thing where like everyone else, it has like hindered the Suns to do anything because they have that on their books and there's literally no way to get out of it at all. And it's going to cost you Durant. Theoretically, in time, it could cost you Booker if this just continues to sour. This becomes just a dumpster fire. Ramona Shelburne had a thing that the shoot around for the Suns yesterday was like awkward, and it's like, no shit, this has got to be the most uncomfortable locker room in the league on a day-to-day basis right now.
And the Mavericks took a lot of flack for trading Luka Doncic and how it all went down. I will say the one part I don't necessarily have the biggest problem with is doing it in secret. And I know that they could have gotten more if they would have done a Luka Doncic thing, and maybe they shouldn't have done it. Whatever. I understand all of that. But this is the other side of that, is if you open it up and you don't trade that guy, and now you allow Kevin Durant to kind of pick his spots, and it's out there and you're losing leverage, this is the other version of that. It kind of just ends up blowing up in your face, and you're kind of just stuck with this. If the Suns, for instance, a month ago would have seen the writing on the wall and said, nobody's taking Bradley Beal, it's time to kind of pull the plug on this thing. We're not going to trade Devin Booker because we still think he's the franchise. What can we get for Kevin Durant? If they would have done that in secret, maybe there was a trade out there with Miami for Jimmy Butler and a bunch of stuff. Maybe there was a trade out there with a different team where you could have negotiated this without it getting to Kevin Durant, without losing leverage, without it infecting your locker room. I don't know. But the Suns have operated in public all of this stuff for so long. They continue to get in their own way, and they are poisoning the locker room. They've done a great job of acquiring talent. They've done a terrible job of literally everything else in terms of building the organization. It's such a mess. There's a lot of teams in the NBA that have talent. Talent wins, but talent gets you in the conversation. Talent doesn't get you over the top, right? You need all that other stuff. And while the Suns have the talent, they don't have any of the other stuff. None of it whatsoever. And that's why they're just sort of stuck. And it's why they're probably going to have to sell short on Kevin Durant. It's why they're going to get stuck with Bradley Beal. And it's why, to your point, Chris, that they're on the clock now for Devin Booker.
And even now, it's like this has to impact, I think, their ability to get the most out of Durant this summer as far as a trade goes, right? Like, everyone's going to know he's unhappy. The Golden State thing, obviously, maybe we can hit on that and like what we think about him not wanting to go there. You haven't covered that team. You might have some insight in just some deeper thoughts, and I might. But like the Rockets, the Hawks, like whoever is going to go and trade for him this summer, like it's gonna the Heat. I mean, the Spurs for all we fucking know, like what they might go and do. Like, why are these teams have to know that Durant's probably unhappy and that the Suns have to do something? They're not going to get their best. They're not going to get the best offers. Their laundry is like out on the street for everyone to see.
Yeah, it's a yard sale,
and it stinks. Like this is a yard sale full of crap nobody wants.
Yeah,
they did that move to get 3 first, and they had to use one. The only trade they made was to dump Yusuf Nurkic, who apparently wasn't talking to his coach.
Yeah, so it's a mess. They're going to have to pivot. It'll be really interesting this summer what happens. And in terms of like, I expect at this point to like, and I'm not reporting this, but like I just expect at this point that Kevin Durant's playing for a different team to begin next season.
I think has to be.
I think the Heat would look. The Heat really wanted Kevin Durant, and I think the only reason Kevin Durant wasn't traded to the Heat was because Kevin Durant did not request the trade. Durant clearly did not want to take that step and be the guy who requested the trade from Phoenix. We'll see if that happens. We'll see if that's different this summer. De'Aaron Fox got to San Antonio for a bargain price because he just told the league, told the Kings, I'm not re-signing. You might as well trade me. Or he indicated at least. But it wasn't a trade request because the Kings approached him first. And then he indicated to the rest of the league, I want to go to San Antonio. So if you trade for me, I'm not going to sign the extension. Kevin Durant has the same power if he wants to wield it. He's got a lot of power in this. If he just picks his spot, and I think that's why the report from Windhorst was that Phoenix was asking the Heat, after the Golden State thing was off the table, they were asking the Heat for everything. The picks, the swaps, all the young players, everything. And Miami was just like, no, we're good. Because they know if we can get Kevin Durant, or if Kevin Durant requests the trade in the summer, we could probably get him for a lot less in a couple of months.
Yeah, that's where this feels like it is headed. Kevin Durant's going to be playing somewhere else to start next season, and the Suns are going to be continually just screwed. Like that's done. And when Shams, right before the deadline, says they're not trading Durant, but they're going to reassess, then it's season they can't turn this around. Spoiler, they're not turning this around. This is this is done. This is all the signs of being dead.
Yep.
Tough stuff. All right. Let's go to the Bucks.
Let's do it.
Wes, Kyle Kuzma. They get Jericho Sims as well. They get Kevin Porter Jr. as well in a move that I think, frankly, is kind of icky considering Porter Jr. still being investigated. I get like the talent play on him versus Marshawn Beauchamp, but the big move is Middleton for Kyle Kuzma. Tells you so much. Getting your return for Middleton being Kuzma, who's having the worst year of his career, I think, being your return for Khris Middleton, who was key for you winning a title, tells you everything about how the Bucks have managed their assets the last couple of years. It's another team. It's not as bad as the Suns, but this is tough, and I don't see a world where they're really with this move competing with Cleveland or New York or Boston come playoff time. I do not think they have the horses to really make a move. Giannis is there. I get all of that. Dame could get hot for a month, but their margin of error is so thin, and I think this makes them more functional and better, but I don't think this makes them a title contender by any stretch of the imagination.
Did you have him there before
the
trade?
Didn't. No, but it's like it felt like they had to do something. They were apparently like in on like maybe thinking of trying to do a Butler thing. They've been linked to Beal at one point as well, if I'm not mistaken. It's just like you got a 3-and-D wing who has not played like a meaningful basketball game in a couple of years for Khris Middleton, who I know is like feels very cooked right now and is on the downslope of his career. But it's just like this. It just feels so underwhelming about what they were able to do here. Yeah, they're more functional, but like, and that's good. But does it really move the needle for them for what they need to do? That's the struggle. And like they probably could have accomplished that. So maybe that's unfair for me to say, but they didn't like move the needle in a major way to me here. Which I think when you're grading them on a Giannis scale, I think you have to look at it that way.
I guess I don't know what you were getting that was better than this for Middleton at this point in his career. And maybe you can make the argument that they should have traded Middleton earlier. I don't know, but you know the guy had double ankle surgery a few months ago, right? I know he's had a couple of good games off the bench for them. Yeah. But he's basically a zero because you just don't know what to expect from him on a night-to-night basis. Like, you can't rely on old Khris Middleton coming back. I know we talk about his playmaking and all that stuff, but like that's why you have Damian Lillard. That's why you have Giannis as an evolving playmaker. You shouldn't have to rely on Khris Middleton's pick and roll stuff the way that you did when they won the championship, when he was so good. He was so good for them. And it is an unfortunate, sort of disappointing way. It kind of just like, it's just such a weird way for a 12-year partnership to end. I mean, 12 seasons. That's how long Middleton and Giannis played together. 700 games together, a championship. They shared 3 All-Star games. Like, it's such a weird way for this to end. But I don't know. I go back and forth on this trade. I hear you. Like, it doesn't get you excited. Kuzma's having a down year in Washington, but he's having a down year for a down team. And this is a bet by the Bucks. This is probably the best thing that was out there for them. And it's, well, we've seen this guy make an impact on a winning team before, on a team that won a championship. We know it's been a few years, but we're hoping that Kyle Kuzma responds differently playing next to Giannis and Dame than he did playing next to Jordan Poole. And maybe he responds a little bit more like what it looked like when he was playing next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Yeah. I think that's an okay bet to make here. And Kuzma's contract isn't awful. You save some money in the deal. I don't hate it. It's not like this thing that's going to get you up to the Celtics or the Cavs, But I think, they're a game behind Indiana for fourth place. I think it makes them a little bit better. I just think this was the only move on the board. I don't have a problem with it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't have a problem with it. I think if you mentioned the functionality, I think that's part of it. Also just the reliability. And I can't believe I'm using reliability and Kyle Kuzma in the same sentence here, but he's going to play the games. He's healthy. And that was the biggest thing with Middleton. You just never knew when this guy was going to get hurt again. You never expected him to be healthy. At least with Kuzma, you get a rotational piece who's going to be there every night. And maybe that's just the best they could do.
Yeah, look, I think the original sin just goes back to trading Drew instead of Middleton in the first place. I think that's really the original sin in this whole asset management post-title.
Do we know that was even an option? Do we know that they wanted?
I don't know. Like, I don't think we know.
Yeah.
But I just think even if I could have gotten less for Middleton and it meant...
Well, you had to get Dame.
Yeah, I just think I rather would have kept Drew and traded Khris and figured it out that way. I just rather would have had Drew going forward than Middleton in a vacuum.
Yeah, it'll be so just not do the Damian Lillard trade and just find what you could get from Middleton a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think I rather would have just gone that route, just because Drew remains yes, it's a smaller role than he had in the title win, but that is still a highly productive player for the Celtics. Mm-hmm. And it stings extra that he went to the Celtics in your conference.
Yeah, and the bad drafting in Milwaukee has been a real problem for a very long time, and that's really the original sin here. Is you never really had somebody else step up and be. Mm-hmm. Literally, nobody else has ever become is AJ Green the best young player that they've gotten over the last few years?
Yeah, and Beauchamp for KPJ, who's was a lottery ticket coming out of college at USC with Cleveland, and has been a lottery ticket basically everywhere he's went and been dogged by off the court issues. Mm-hmm. Some very serious, most very serious. That in itself is emblematic to your point that they haven't drafted well at all in several years. They haven't hit anyone besides AJ Green.
Right.
Stuff. They're probably the fifth best team in the East, I would say. I would have Orlando ahead of them, I think. Is that unfair?
Fifth?
Yeah.
I have them fourth. I would put Indiana over Orlando. To me, it's either Indiana or Milwaukee. It's still Giannis at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point. At least they have him. All right, let's go to Brandon Ingram. Mm-hmm. Delta Toronto. I'm a
Whatever
little
you think,
confused.
Chris. I'll defer to you. This is for a guy who had been talked about in trade rumors for so long to just get traded to Toronto.
I was going to Wes. I was going to defer to you because I don't I think Ingram is a talented player. He clearly is, but it's he and Julius Randle are the captains of guys who are talented, but I'm not sure I want them on my team. Those are the guys that I'm just they're good, but do they contribute in a way that makes me satisfied about winning basketball games in 2025? Probably not. And I don't think Ingram and Scotty Barnes is a thing that I'm excited about.
So what were the details of this trade? Do you have them in front of you?
Let me pull.
It's Bruce Brown.
You couldn't get you could also did no one I know his salaries no one was willing to give up an asset to go get Bruce Brown.
Toronto has. Brooklyn is giving Toronto a run for their money and Utah for miscalculating what their guys are worth.
Yeah. All right, so here's the trade. The Raptors got.
Just give me the players.
So Olynyk, Brown.
Yeah, so Olynyk and Bruce Brown
and a first and a second.
Okay, so
traded the Canadian for Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, I like Olynyk in New Orleans.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's a good trade for them, and I like Bruce Brown in New Orleans. I don't know. I don't know. It's fine. It's to me this is a move before a bigger summer of other moves where you're gonna have to figure out what you're gonna do with Brandon Ingram because he's gonna be up for a contract extension. You at least got to look at him for a couple of months here if you're Toronto and decide whether or not you want to keep him or not. Or do you move him in the offseason? Do you just walk away in the offseason and say, well, we didn't really. I don't know. We lost a first-round pick, I guess, is the main thing there. But I don't think Brandon Ingram and RJ Barrett necessarily work together.
Yeah.
The one thing I know is that you need a guy. You need. Scotty Barnes is a lot of things. He's not a natural scorer.
No.
Brandon Ingram is not a lot of things. He is a natural scorer. So, on paper, you could be well, to get those two guys together makes sense, and I think we'll get a chance to see if it does work. because Brandon Ingram is a natural scorer. He's going to shoot the ball. I think Toronto needed somebody like that. I think it's worth the flyer. I really do. But it's not something I could get terribly excited about.
Yeah, I want to see what the contract's going to look like as well. Because if you give him a bunch of money, I don't think that's great business.
I don't think anybody's going to go out there and give Brandon Ingram a bunch of money. Like what? I think $30 million a year is maybe where he lands. He's not getting the max.
He's probably worth like between 25 and 30 to me. And I really
Derek
think
White type deal.
Yeah, and he's in the range of guys that I think in this new apron environment that's going to get squeezed, and they're still going to make good money, but they're not just going to get maxes handed out to them like they're nothing.
Yeah, he's going to be fascinating as sort of a market setter for a lot of guys who are like him.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. All right, let's go to we got a couple miscellaneous ones we should hit West before we get out of here. You can tell me which one you have thoughts about. The Clippers get Bojan Bogdanovic, trading Terrence Mann out.
Bogdanovic,
excuse me. Go get him. Okay. Grizzlies don't get a wing and then send Marcus Smart to the Wizards. That was the thing that happened. Mm-hmm. And the Thunder got Daniel Tice, but also get Chet Holmgren back on Friday.
Yeah, and then they waived Daniel Tice.
Okay, I did miss this. So I actually kind of liked having Tice's depth, but they waived him. So
Me too. But they ended up waiving him.
Sure.
Bogdanovic on the Clippers is really interesting to me. I think they probably needed one more scorer. They lose Terrence Mann and Bones Highland at the deadline, but you add Bogdanovic, who's just a better scorer than those guys, and a real fierce competitor who I think was kind of wasting away in Atlanta a lot. So I like him. I like him quite a bit for the Clippers. That to me makes sense. It's a little bit of Kawhi Leonard insurance. It's also Norm Powell insurance in case for whatever reason he ever gets hurt and he can just kind of step into that spot. So I don't mind that. I like that for the Clippers quite a bit. They sell high on Terrence Mann, which I think is I think that's a good move. I like Terrence Mann fine. I don't know what the ceiling for him was. So you get a contributor. You just get better if you're the Clippers. And then for the Grizzlies, they're taking a lot of flack on social media right now because they traded 2 first-round picks to get Marcus Smart. He basically just spends his whole career in Memphis being hurt. Yeah. And then they trade a first-round pick to get off of him. On paper, that's bad GMing. I totally understand that.
For a team that hasn't made any other moves, really. It's in conjunction with that.
That's the tough part about this. I will give the Grizzlies front office a break here because they're so good at drafting that they never really even needed Marcus Smart because they had guys like Scottie Pippen Jr., Vince Williams, G.G. Jackson, and then obviously Jalen Wells this year. Kind of just guys that they've drafted, developed, brought in, who have taken and earned, frankly, really key rotation spots. So it never felt like they were missing Marcus Smart at the same time. So they took a little bit of a swing. I didn't like that trade from Memphis in the first place, but they took a swing. It didn't work out. That was it. I think that this could scare them off from doing maybe deals like this in the future. But it's an L, but it's not like I think maybe some of it's gone overboard a little bit because generally I think we all agree that this is a good front office.
Yeah, I think that team just had an opportunity to do something aggressive and they didn't do. They kind of punted more than anything else. Like they moved sideways more than anything else. I don't love that part of it.
At the deadline?
Yeah, that was a team that was apparently was injured in Jimmy Butler. Obviously, that was aiming really, really high, but he didn't want to go there, didn't want to take the risk. I understand that. Golden State has a little bit of advantage of Market and Steph Curry that can appeal 100%. To Jimmy Butler that John Morant and Jaren Jackson just doesn't.
And obviously their main priority was not, I think they were out there kind of shopping wings, but their main priority was clearly getting off of space so that they could re-sign Jaren Jackson Jr. this summer.
Yes.
And they did that.
Which you should do.
They did accomplish
all-star,
that.
great player. Yes, they did that. That team is still...
When you consider availability, he's been their best player for 2 years now.
Yeah.
So
I just feel like they've been the team poised to do something really aggressive for 2.5 years now, and they just have never got around to it. That's just what it's starting to feel like a little bit. And I get how that happens. Small markets are in weird spots. Cap stuff is really delicate to balance. They have the benefit of being good at drafting where they don't have to go out and make a more aggressive move to cover up for draft mistakes, right? They do have that advantage. Getting Wells on its own is okay, we can just not do this. But there is just an upside there that I want them to chase at some point. I don't know when it could happen. Maybe they should just say, F it, we're going to trade for Kevin Durant in the summer and just worry about it later. Truly.
Maybe. But what like that's the problem now. Like, I think I think they kind of let the Heat know that they were going to be willing to trade for Jimmy Butler and not care about the extension.
The way Windy
Like,
talked
I don't think
about
they
it
ever pulled their offer.
Yeah, the way
But
Windy
when
talked
you look
about
at-
it was that they had an offer that the Heat would have been amenable to. We don't know what that offer was, but it sounds like there was like a package that
Well,
both
you
sides
just-
were cool with.
You do the math, and it was going to be Marcus Smart, and then probably a couple other things, right?
Yeah, like all the
and I don't know that Brandon Clark was ever part of that, but it probably would have been like Jake LaRavia's expiring, maybe Luke Kennard's expiring, stuff like that. But then, and maybe a draft pick or two. But then the Heat looked at what the Warriors were offering, and just Andrew Wiggins is a better player than anything that the Grizzlies were offering, and the Heat wanted a good player, and the Grizzlies couldn't really offer a good player, and they weren't going to be willing to include Jalen Wells, nor should they have been. They basically, I think they would have been prepared to get Butler if they could steal Butler for nothing, and then just let him walk away in the offseason and deal with it. And I think you could say that they were aggressive, but they weren't going to move any of their young pieces. They weren't going to move a bunch of picks. Maybe there was a 1 or 2 picks on the table, but ultimately the Warriors had the better package because they had the better player in it, and that's what the Heat wanted. So would have been fascinating to know if Jimmy Butler decided that he really didn't want to go to Golden State, which I always thought all that stuff was really overblown. And if the Warriors never made that move, I wonder if Jimmy Butler's playing in Memphis right now.
Yeah. Last thing I just want to mention, I was not a trade, but Lonzo Ball gets extended by the Bulls. 2 years. I like that for him. Like that he gets some money. I still would, if I was a team in the summer, I would still maybe kick around trying to trade for him. I still think that's a guy that can help like a better team when the Bulls are out right now. And I would look for him as a possible summer trade guy more than he's now a Bull for the next 2 years.
Yeah, good piece of business for Chicago because now you can at least trade him in the summer and get something for him.
Yeah, and good business for him not to like
diminish.
And good thing for him not to diminish his market by being a buyout guy. Because once you go the buyout route, it's really hard to walk back being a buyout guy.
Yeah, that never really. I know that was out there. That never made sense to me. But for exactly the reason you just said. So, yeah, good for Lonzo. You know, I'm with you. I think teams will start calling on him and probably Vucevic again in the summer.
Last thing, Wes. It's been 10 years since Kevin Love was traded from the Wolves to Cleveland for Andrew Wiggins. Now they're on the same team. Kevin Love's Instagram post about this better be an all-timer. Like he's been on a heater. He
announced his retirement.
Wait, what?
He announced his retirement with the Michael Jordan video.
Oh boy, I missed this.
But a generational Instagram run comes to an end. So good for Kevin Love.
I took that as like he was like retiring at the end of the year. Not that he was retiring from Instagram, but that's unfortunate.
No, he wants to play until he's 40, and he wants to stay in Miami. Like he's good. But
sick of the Cleveland winners. Yeah, but him and Andrew Wiggins on the same team.
So Kevin Love stayed in touch with Andrew Wiggins, despite the fact that they've never played with each other. They've kind of been in touch, like they've gotten to know each other because they were traded for each other, like you mentioned. And I do think that Kevin Love is excited to play with Andrew Wiggins, and kind of he's called it a full circle moment. So I think that it's a cool story.
Kevin Love, one of just the best. Just the fact that now that they are on the same team is just very funny to me. And like if we ever could get just like a Players Tribune like conversation piece, we could bring that back. Kevin Love and Andrew Wiggins talking in detail about what their lives have been like last 2 years would be fascinating to me, personally. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll end there. What a deadline. Luka to the Lakers, Jimmy Butler to the Warriors, Kevin Durant not moved, Wes gets to go to bed.
Nope, I have like 3 more podcasts to do after this one. So.
Well, you're a trooper. I'm going to have a very cold Modelo at a concert. And
who are you seeing? Tonight?
Charles Wesley Godwin at the Agora.
Oh,
little folk, little country energy for me. Gonna have the coldest $16 Modelo I've ever had in my life. Beer prices at concerts they're for NBA, they're NBA player prices. They're not middle class working class prices. Wes, it's unbelievable.
You're paying the max.
I'm paying the max, and I'm paying the tax on top of that. Like it's not what you want.
Tax.
Paying the luxury tax to have my Modelo. We're in there. We'll be back next week sometime. Talk to you soon. Enjoy the weekend. Process all these moves. Please share, rate, review the show if you have not already on your podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. Thanks to Dylan Heiser for his work on production. Have a great week, everyone. Enjoy the weekend of hoops.